Hi everyone, I welcome you all into this Dell Boomi session. So in the last session, we talked about integration with ServiceNow, right? We saw how to create the developer account, right? How to spin up an instance, very easy, right? And once we do that, we get an URL, we get a username, we get a password. We use that in our which connector? ServiceNow connector, right? And yep, that's all. So then we can do the mapping of certain fields such as short description. There is something called as description. There is something called as assign group. Likewise, we have many fields which you can use for mapping, and this we saw only for creating an incident, right? So we have many other operations as well. So based on your business need, you can see what exactly you want to cover as a part of the integration. So in today's session, I will cover two very important topics. Okay, these are very significant when you're working for the real-time projects, right? Uh, Even when you're part of any of the interviews, this is kind of a sure shot question, I can say. Okay, so there is a concept of custom libraries. There is a concept of custom libraries. How to add custom libraries to the runtime. Okay, so any one of you who have seen my previous videos, right? You might have seen that I already covered, and you might have observed like my all batches are different. You will not see the same flow, same exact replica of the examples. Also, few things definitely might be same, but I have a tendency to change the flow in almost all batches of mine depending on the kind of audience I have, right? So now what happens is, we have been doing integration with the database, right? Which database did we do integration with?
Oracle.
Very nice, Oracle database. Other few databases which you might want to check out is MySQL database. Okay, SQL Server DB. I mean, I'm not going to show everything. Even you do not need to know everything, but yeah, if you get a chance, you can try one or two another DB, AS400 database. So these are few more which you would see in the industry, right? These days, Snowflake is not a database as such, but yeah, there is more to it. But yeah, Snowflake integrations are also very famous these days. Snowflake is being used very extensively by different organizations. But regardless of the fact whether you're using MySQL or SQL Server or AS400 or Snowflake for that matter, uh, so I think we have one person who is joining. So regardless of the database we want to integrate with, the steps remain same. Even with Oracle DB, right? Somebody messaged me a few days back, like you know that he or she tried with 18C database and it was not working, and then I told that go and try with 11G. I don't know. I think there was someone from this batch or maybe some other batch. I really don't remember. But even that person was doing the integration with the Oracle database, but with 18C, it was not working, right? So now the problem is, give me a minute, guys. Okay. So now what I'm saying is, why it didn't work with 18C but worked with 11G, we have to understand. So behind the scene, right, there is some technology which is used for integration, right? You might have heard of JDBC. Yes, Java database connectivity. So there are certain drivers, right? So drivers are nothing but kind of a jar files which will have all the code that facilitates the integration between Boomi runtime. What is Boomi runtime? Atom, right? and the database, right? So even if you see any of the applications for that matter, right? Any UI, any application, any UI based application. I don't know if you have developed any application related to Java anytime. So if you want to interact with the database, you will use some JDBC drivers. So there is type 0, type 1, type 2 drivers. All these drivers are there. Uh, so now using those drivers, right, we eventually establish a connectivity. So what happens is when we do Atom installation, when we do Atom installation, you might have seen some jars and all stuff get downloaded, right?
Yes.
Yes. So Atom is of very small size, right? Right. But then lot of other jars and other stuff uh, get downloaded. So now what happens is there are only limited jars that get downloaded. Okay. Right? And those limited jars are for some specific databases with specific versions only. So what I'm trying to tell you is, so if you go here, Boomi Learning, this is the directory where my Atom is installed. I created a new account for myself because I wanted to show this example. So if I want to show integration with the database, where should database be? It should be in my machine, right? Or in the same machine where your Atom is installed,
Your machine.
right? I mean, in the same machine where Atom is installed, you should have database, isn't it? Or at least in the same network,
Hmm.
right? So what I did is I installed a new Atom. In my machine only, I installed one database also. That is MySQL database, or I have got Oracle database also. So the point I'm trying to say is this is how your installation directory looks like, right? Is there anyone who has not seen this directory? Okay, if you have not seen, go and check it out, right? So when you do the Atom installation, this is how it looks like. This is your install 4J, right? Here you will have certain files related to when you do the installation, you will have certain files over here. Then you go to the bin from where you can start your Atom, restart your Atom, all that stuff, right? Then here you have some configuration files, certain properties related to the containers. Then some of the important things are, there is a log file where you will have container logs. So this is, so all the execution we do are eventually part of a container, and here you will see the container. So whenever I will log in, whenever I will do certain executions, or if something fails, you can see the container logs, right? So we have talked about process level logs, we have talked about shape level logs. There is another log, what is that? User logs. And now this is container
Container
logs,
log.
right? So here you will find your container logs. Now here, do you find any lib directory? Yes. So you see a lot of jars are kind of available. Yes or no?
Yes.
So there are a lot of jars. So did we explicitly download and install these jars? No, right? These came out of the box, right? When we do the Atom installation, these come out of the box. Even you will see there is a JRE, right? So what happens is Boomi will have a tendency to install a local copy of JRE. This is again one question. Okay. This is one question in the certification in the architect exam. Whether Boomi will have its own JRE copy or not. Yes. So here you can find that, right? It does have it. So you can just look at it, right? I will explain you some of the directories which are important in today's session, right? So if you will go and check your, directory structure, right? Maybe you can check it right away or you can check it after the session. You will not find this directory user lib. You will not find the directory user lib. This has been created by me just some time back. You can see I created it yesterday, uh, but you may not find it, and I'll explain you what is the significance of it. So the point I'm trying to explain over here is when you do the installation, there is a specified directory structure which gets generated out of the box. you will find a lib folder where you would see there are a lot of jars which comes out of the box, but then these jars are not good enough to do the integrations with all the external systems or all the external databases. Even sometimes you might want to write some scripts. Okay, so when you write some scripts, let's say you write some groovy scripts, some complex scripts, so in that case you might need some additional utilities which are not there by default. So you need those utilities. So for those you need to add custom libraries, right? What do you need to add? Custom libraries. So what I did is I installed MySQL DB. Okay. Like last night I installed MySQL DB, and I have opened a tutorial which will explain you how to install MySQL DB. Okay. So there is a UI version of it. If you want to explore that, you can use that. I had that MySQL with the UI version. I don't know, somehow it was not working and I was like really short of time. So I'm using it from the command prompt right now, but that should not bother you because MySQL is not what we are trying to understand over here. Just idea is that we look into one more DB other than Oracle database where establishing the connectivity may not be so smooth. So when you start working in real time, you should not feel that this was not covered in the session or I'm kind of helpless. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is you follow this blog. It is very nicely explained how to get the installation of MySQL done, right? So I have installed MySQL DB, and here you can see there is some table I created, right? So if you want, you can create more tables, but right now I will live with this table. So this is a MySQL DB where, within the MySQL server, I mean, you can have different databases. So you can write like this, show databases. Okay, I'm sorry. Actually, here you have to use semicolon. Okay, can you see different databases? Information underscore schema, MySQL, performance underscore schema, sys. So these are different databases in your MySQL database, right? And you can create your own databases also. But again, we are not MySQL people. I usually cover all these things so that you can practice, right? If you go to other trainers training, they will not cover all these steps or they'll not give you reference. So you cannot try that out yourself. So since the idea is you can also try out yourself, so that's why I'm telling you, you can go here. So there are some series of steps you have to follow. Just follow that blog. So first of all, you have to get an installable, right? I'll just summarize that. You have to get the installable, which will be a zip file. Unzip that, right? And then you have to go to command prompt and you have to run 3 to 4 different commands. The first one being, I'll tell you, you have to start from this. So here they have explained the architecture of it. So first command is you start from here, okay? 3.2. This is where you have to start it from. So what you can do is you can first of all follow this command, and from where you have to follow it, you have to go to the bin folder, and from here you will run this. Then you have to start the server, for which you have this command, and these all commands should be executed in separate command prompts, right? That's what they have suggested. So if you'll see, I have multiple command prompts open because I have executed these all in a separate command prompts. And then at last, it's pretty easy. You have to start a client which can interact with this. So this is your command for this. Yeah, you can follow it, you will understand it. If you'll have any issues, you can let me know. I mean, even I am as new to this installation as probably you are, because I'm not MySQL expert. But what I can tell you is by default it runs on 3306 port. By default the user is root. Okay, and you might need, so root, and it will also generate a temporary password which you might need to alter to whatever password you want. Okay, so port, and there will be something like database name which I was showing you just some time back. So for example, right now I'm using which database? Sys database, right? So all this information would be required. Okay, host by default will be local host if you're doing it in your local machine, right? So you have port, you have got the host, you have got the username, you have got the password. Then also the connectivity may not work, because in order to establish a connectivity with any database, what do we need apart from these all details? We need the driver. Yes, we need the driver. So one thing is driver may be there out of the box available in your lib folder. Yes. Another thing is it may not be there by default. So what happens is by default the driver for MySQL database is not there. Okay. By default the driver for MySQL database may not be there. So what you have to do is you have to add it manually. This is very, very important, guys. Please understand it. So you have to add it manually. So there are two approaches to do it. Okay. So if you do not have driver, what kind of error you will get? You will get driver not found, something like that. So I'll show you. So this is my account, Sumit, and I'll create a new folder, MySQL. Yep. So in this MySQL, we start with a new component, process integration with MySQL. All right, star shape. And then what do we need? Database connector, right? All right, we have the database connector. So what can we do over here is let's say the action we want to perform is we want to pull some data. We'll go here on the connection. So can you see the database URL and the driver type? So which driver type should we choose? MySQL, right? So it is by default com.mysql.jdbc.driver, right? This is kind of a, you can say the driver name, the fully qualified name of the driver. Okay. What is this? This is fully qualified name of the driver. Now, this is just the reference, but where is this driver definition? So you understand this. Each driver will have some class, right? But there must be some place where we have the implementation of the class, right? And that class will have a lot of methods which will eventually help to establish the connectivity with the database. And where is the definition of that class?
Hello.
Yeah, where is the class definition?
com.mysql.jdbc.driver.
Yeah, so that jar, whatever we will have, right? In that there will be the definition of the class. This is just the name. So in Java, there will be interfaces, there will be class, and within that class, there'll be implementation, there will be methods, there'll be a lot of code written, which will eventually help to establish the connectivity with the database, right? So that definition will be there in the jar files. Okay. So which is also called as drivers. So if you will go to net, uh, you can go to net, you can look for the drivers for MySQL, or if you're working with the SQL server, you can look for their drivers. Similarly, you can look for the Snowflake drivers also, right? Now, once you get the driver, right? So every time you may not need a driver. So when we did the integration with Oracle database, did we look for any kind of driver?
No,
Right? Why didn't we need that?
because it was inbuilt in the Boomi.
Yes, it was there by default with the Boomi installation, right? Now with the SQL Server or MySQL, you may not have that jar or the driver by default. So you have to get it from the net, and or maybe you can ask from that respective team also. So there will be some team, right, who manages the database. You can request them also to provide the jars. And then there are two ways to add those jars. One is the manual way. Okay, there are two approaches I told, right? So first approach is a manual approach. In the manual approach, what we do is we create a folder with the name user lib. User lib is like user library. So this is like, this lib is what comes with the default installation. And another thing is a user lib. User library is what you create. You go here and create a folder with the name database. This all I have created. You may not have it by default. Okay, you have to create a folder with the name database, and within that database you can add this driver. So this is the jar file I'm talking about. Okay, this jar file uh, is the one where you will have your actual code written that will help you to establish the connectivity with the database, right? You're understanding what I'm saying? Behind the scenes, there has to be some code, right, which will get executed that will help you to establish the connectivity with the respective database. So the point I'm trying to convey is MySQL connectivity may not get established by default. You will have to add the driver. So if you have access to the installation machine where you have done the installation and all that stuff, you go to the installation directory, create a folder with the name user lib, create a folder with the name database, and within that database, you place that jar file. Right? So let's say what I do is I will get rid of this jar file and I will just put it over here in my D drive. Okay, it is saying the action cannot be completed because the file is open in where? Atom.exe. It means it is already being used. So it cannot remove that file from there, because once you start your Atom, it will load all the jars which it needs. So probably I cannot remove it right now, but if I do not put it over there, over here, your connectivity will not get established, since it will start looking for the respective jars, right, respective drivers. And if it does not find driver, the connectivity will fail and you will get an error saying that the driver not found, right? Whenever you see a message something like driver not found, it means there is a jar which is required and right now it's not in place, right? So now what we do is we go to the database and connection, and we will start writing the details. So my username is root. I have set my password, localhost 3306, database name. What is the database name? Sys. Save, and I'll say test connection. Which Atom? This is the Atom I installed. Okay. So connectivity is getting established.
Yes.
Yeah. So why it is happening? Because I have the right jar. Yes. If I do not have the right jar, I may get an error that the driver not found. Right. Anyone who do not understand what I'm trying to explain? All right. So we have this driver which will help to establish the connectivity. Now, what if you do not have the rights or access to the machine where your installation was done? Because in all projects, they will not give you the access to that machine. It might happen or not, right? isn't it? It might happen that you may end up in a scenario where you have the access to the platform, but you do not have access to the machine, right, where installation is done. Then also Boomi gives you a methodology which allows you to carry out uh, the deployment of jar files to the atom. Okay, how do you go about it? You have to go to the settings, you have to go to account information and setup, right? You have to go to account information and setup, and there is something called as account libraries. In this account libraries, do you see there is a jar file? Yes, it was not there until some time back. Okay, so let's say I go and delete it. So what it is saying, the file is currently being referenced by at least one deployed blah blah blah. Undeploy all the components before you delete it. That's fine. So I already did some POCs yesterday. Okay, but what I'm trying to tell you is, if you will go under the same directory, account libraries, you may not find such any such kind of file. So what you have to do is, you have to get the file from the internet, okay, or from the respective person, and you have to go for the option upload a file. Choose a file, and with me this file is already there under my downloads. Under jar files, this file is there. You have to select that and you have to click on open. That's all, right? If you do that, that jar file will get uploaded over here under account libraries. Yes, if you go here under the account libraries, that is a step number 1. What is the step? Upload the jar in the account libraries. Where do we get the option of account libraries?
Account settings.
Yes, under the account settings, right? You will go to the settings. You can go account information and setup, account libraries, and you have to upload the file. This is step number 1, right? Then what you do is, you go to the build tab, and here you will create a new component, and that new component with this time will be custom library. This new component name is custom library. So maybe I'll name it as MySQL library. Okay. So here the custom library type, what is that? So you have different options: general, scripting, date connector. So this time, where do we want to use that jar file? In the connector type. And which connector type? Database. So here you will get an option, select files. So where do these files come from? These come from account libraries. Yes, you will find this. You will hit save. This is step number 2. What is step number 2? Create.
We need to go to build tab.
Create custom library component. Choose type as connector, and which connector? Database connector. Then what is the next step? You saved it. Then do you see there is an option to create package component? Yes, we are creating a package component. And then what is the next option we have? Deploy. So where should I deploy it? I should deploy it to the runtime where I want to use it. In which runtime I want to deploy? s-dev, which is tagged to a dev environment. I will select the dev environment and I will say, go ahead and deploy this. So when you follow these steps, what it is going to do is, it will automatically create a directory with the name as user lib. It will automatically do that. Within the user lib, it will automatically create a database directory. And within that database directory, it will automatically place that jar file. And after doing this, you just go to the atom management and restart your atom. How do you restart your atom? You go to the atom. Do you have an option restart? Yes. So I'll just click. I have a habit of clicking in 2-3 times because sometimes I've seen it is not getting restarted properly. So just restart it. So what will restart do is restart will load that jar file into Atom, because Atom should have the reference of that jar file, right? Then only connectivity will get established. So if you restart that Atom, that reference to that jar file gets established, and then you can come back to the build tab. In the build tab, you can go to that database, and the database, you can configure the connection details. You can click on the test connection. You can select the Atom and your connectivity would work. Yeah. Any questions so far? So we'll jot down the steps, upload the jar, create custom library, and then package it, deploy it. What will deployment do? It will create a user lib directory. Within user lib, it will create database. Yes or no? And within that database, you will have the jar file. So let me
I have
tell.
one question.
Yeah, just let me complete. Okay, give me a moment.
Okay.
Then you can ask it. So let's say what we do is we create one more custom library component. For example, okay, this time I will name some dummy custom library, and this time I will keep scripting. Okay, just deliberately I'll keep scripting. Again, I'll select the same jar file, save and close. Yeah, save and close. So you can see here under components, this is there. I say create package, add details. You will create a package. Package is created, and then you want to deploy. Let's say I want to deploy under the same environment, this custom library. So library is same, but what has changed? What has changed? Custom library
Type.
type has changed. You go here under the, do you find some new folder getting generated? Yes. In that new folder, do you see the jar file? Yes. So exactly same thing will happen for the database also. It will automatically create those directory structure and it will put that jar file. Just make sure after that you restart your Atom. Okay. So yeah, Priyanka, you were asking something.
First is my question is, are jar files are like according to the version of the MySQL, we should
Yes.
get the jar files.
I mean, typically majority of them will have a backward compatibility. Okay. But yes, you will have to find the one which is compliant to that version of the MySQL.
And my second question is, if I first we manually create user directory and then database folder, and again we follow the second step, like second approach to create that user lib. So will it get override or it will
Yeah, I think it
give
should get
that
overridden.
folder only? Okay.
It should get overridden.
Okay.
So these are the two steps. After that, I mean, these are the two approaches. After that, you see your test connectivity, you will not get the driver related error anymore and things should work. So these are the common steps you should know. People might ask you, do you know how to add a custom library, right? So these are the steps. And another important thing you might have observed is that all the components cannot be deployed individually. Can anybody recall so far which all components have we seen that can be deployed individually?
Process route.
Yes, we have seen process route, and now this one is another one, which is custom libraries.
Library.
Yes. So now what you could do is we will go back to our original process, integration with MySQL. So here we'll go and this is the connection, right? Yes. I'll test it one more time. Then I can go and configure the operation. the steps remains pretty much same. Okay, statement, let's say select. Here I'll choose Atom, database MySQL. I think these are the same connections, which is fine. And what is the object which I created? So if you see here, I created students. Yes. So you'll have to see the syntax and all. Okay. So you may not know the syntax for all the different databases, which is fine. Okay. Because you do not need to bother how to write those complex tables and all. That's fine. Right. Sometimes you will get this error. This is a common error you keep on getting when you are establishing. Go back and try one more time. So it is saying Atom is connecting to the database. It finds the student table. Atom is loading columns. There was only one column. Next, finish, save and close, save and close, hit OK. After that, just add a stop shape. You can see the data flowing. Yes. So what is the data we have over here? Only one field, that is 101. That is the student ID. Do you see 101? Yes. So that means you are able to integrate with MySQL database also, and you're able to pull the data. Right. So this is not so tough. Only thing is you should know those steps. Okay. So you should know both the approaches. One is you can go to that installation directory, create user lib folder. Within that user lib folder, you have to create a database folder and push your jar over there. Or else another approach is, what is another approach? You add that jar in the account libraries, create a custom library component, package it, deploy it, restart the Atom, and you should be good. Right? Any questions, guys, here so far?
Sumit, I have one question. Like while installing that MySQL, the commands which you listed, only we have to run that much commands, or
You
we
can
have to
follow
see the
this for that.
documentation?
You have to follow this. Okay, I just listed down so that you get idea, but start from 3.2 in this document from here.
Yeah, but there are lot many commands. Yeah.
Go through that now, Priyanka. What is that? I'm giving
Okay.
you the commands also. I mean, what do you expect? You expect me to install it in your machine or what? I'm giving you the reference document. You have not even seen it. But then how do I go about it? You see here, it is for Windows, it is for Mac OS. So would you won't run all three, right? For Ubuntu, you will be using one of those Windows.
Okay. I'm just asking.
No, first read it out now. I mean, see, nobody can spoon feed and put it there, right? As much I'm trying to help, I don't think any trainer will do that. I'm giving you the reference document. At least look at it. It is having the download path from where you will get it. It is giving you the version. How many commands are there? Tell me. There is only one command. Where are so many commands? There is only one command over here. For Mac OS, you have to discard. I'm using my Windows. Ubuntu, I will discard. Then you come here for Windows. Again, how many commands are there? Only one command to start the database server. Mac OS, I have to discard. Then shut down server. If you want, you can do it, or you can just close that window. Then start a client. Go to the directory. How many command? Only one command. After that, same for Mac OS. Then it is asking if you want to change the password. How do you do it? Your client gets started. Then it is asking if you want to create a new user. Now it's up to you. It's a whether you want to do it or not. And then it is asking you how to create the database table and insert records. So you have to develop a habit of doing research, and this is not for Priyanka, for everyone. Okay, no training will help you to get 100%, because if by doing a training of some dollars, if you could get a job of 100 times of that dollars what you're spending, everybody could do that. We all need to develop that habit of doing a research. Nothing will come in the form of a document, like 1,000-page document, which you will follow, and now nothing will come out of this. When you're working in real time, there'll be so many things dynamic. When I work with you people, I don't know everything. We get some errors, we refer certain documentation, we refer certain blogs, and we find the solution. That's all, right? So please go through it. If you're stuck, I mean, don't ping me directly if you get stuck. Try to do that research, right? Even I didn't know before this session how to install MySQL, though I did for my previous batches. That was not, that was an enterprise edition. This time I use community edition because community edition is lightweight, whereas enterprise edition is very, very heavy. So just follow it and it will work. If it doesn't work, we are here. I have given the path of this document in the notes also here. All right, we'll talk about one more shape which we have not covered. So if you see this list, we have covered all the shapes except one shape. Which one is that? There is a shape called as find changes shape. Uh, I have seen a lot of people not knowing about this shape properly. Okay, process, root, and find changes shape. These are considered as too complex shapes to understand, right? It is really simple, but you have to understand it. This is helpful for data integration. Okay, so there are two things: application integration, and there is something called as data integration. Okay, when we are trying to integrate the operational data. Operational data means the live data. It is called as application integration, which means, let's say the data gets generated in one system and immediately it is pushed to other system. So this is like real time or not? Yes. So application integrations will be always, these will be always either real time or near real time. Data integration, when we are trying to integrate the data at the rest. What do you mean by integration? Integrate the data at rest. So the data might be piling up in some repository. Okay, for example, a database or some file system, and we will have scheduled job which will pull the data in batches from the repository and push it into the target system. Okay, this is important to know. I'm not sure if these definitions I give in earlier sessions also, but that's fine. Need to know this. So now what happens is when you're doing data integration, right? So you're moving the data from one system to another, and typically this data is in chunks. So I'll give you an example. So you all know Big Bazaar, right? So Big Bazaar might be doing a lot of transactions every day, right? So they have a lot of stores. So in every city, they have a lot of stores, right? So in Delhi, they may have minimum, I think, 7 to 8 stores. In Hyderabad, in Bangalore, in Chennai, it's likewise many cities. But then all the data from different data sources will go into a data warehouse. So data warehouse means what? Some repository, right? Where you will keep things for, right? So this data warehouse is the place where the data from the different sources will come. It will be kind of normalized. Okay. And it will be pushed to this data warehouse, right? So what I'm trying to say is Big Bazaar must be having one data warehouse where they will maintain the data from the different data sources, which might be the transactions from the different geographical locations. And they would want the whole data to be here. And then they will do some analysis on this data. Some analysis on this data. So you might have heard of business intelligence, BI. Okay. Analytics, right? So when you see all this data, business intelligence, analytics, right? So this all are typically carried out on the data which is there in the data warehouse. Yes. So point I'm trying to say is integration. Whenever you're working in the integration world, you will have very common use cases wherein you have to move the data from the different data sources to the data warehouse, and the data warehouse behind the scenes, so it will have a lot of capabilities, but behind the scene it will be some database only. Okay, it might be sometimes SQL server, it might be MySQL database, or it might be Snowflake, right? So this will be a database only. So the point I'm trying to say is when you do all these things, right? When you try to pull the data, so there will be two types of load: full load, half load. This is also called as incremental load. What is the meaning of full load? We pull all the data from the source system and push it into target. That is full load, right? And what is incremental load? We pull only the changed data since the last synchronization, right? This is also called as incremental load, is also called as change data capture. What it is also called as? Change data capture, or also called as CDC. Okay, you will hear this terminology very, very frequently when you're working in the data integration. Yes. Any questions so far? Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you over here is, now this find changes shape, as the name suggests, is used to find the difference between two subsequent data sets. And this shape is capable of letting you know that what has changed since the last execution. Okay, so for example, there is an employee ID, employee name, which will have 101 Sumit. Okay, now what you do is, this file maybe, let's say, gets 102 Amit. So now what has changed? What has changed, guys? Only a new record has got added, right? So this new record had added. So when we want to move to the target system, should we move both of these, or should we move only this 102 Amit?
Only two, 102 Amit.
102 Amit, and that is change data capture, which means you're capturing the changed data only. Why would you want to push this, right? Because this is already pushed. Why would I want to push the data necessarily? So let's say now thing is 101 Sumit got changed to Zumit. In this case, what you want to do? You want to do two things, right? One is whatever data which was pushed earlier, this data you want to update, and at the same time, there is data which is newly added, isn't it? Now, let's say the third scenario is, maybe something like this. In this case, what do you want to do? This was first execution, this was second execution, and now let's say this is the third execution. Okay, and let's assume employee ID is the unique identifier in all of these records. So let's start from here. First record, your target was having nothing. Let's say your target is some database. It was having nothing, so it will be an add operation, and 101 Sumit will get added over here, right? So what's gonna happen in this one, or what should happen in this one? In this one, 101 should get updated to Sumit, and at the same time there must be a new entry, and that should be 102 Amit. So there are two operations here. What are the two operations we are performing? Update, and this one is add. How about this one? So for 101, no change. So there should not be anything going for 101. So 101 Sumit remains as is, no change. What about 102? 102 Amit? 102 should be
Deleted.
very nice. And what about 103?
Add.
Very nice. It should be added. So that's how your change data capture works, right? So change data capture means from the previous execution, we should be able to identify automatically that what has changed. So when we talk about the changes, there are three things: add, update, or delete. Okay, add, sometimes people also call it as create, update, or delete. So these are the things which can happen, right? So find changes shape in Boomi allows you to do that. So let us see how does it work. Okay, you will understand it. I was in, like, I have seen some of the interviewers, like who have requirements of the data integration, right? They will definitely ask you this question. Okay, I have seen few people getting rejected because they didn't know about this shape, and it was very important for the business to know this shape because their major business was around data integration. So we start with a new component. What is that? Process find changes. All right, we'll start with the star shape of no data type, and what we'll do is we'll come here. We'll start with some data over here: employee ID, employee name. Yes, and right now I'll start with 101 Sumit. So which type of file is it? Or which flat file, right?
CSV.
Yeah, CSV, correct. CSV, or you can say flat file. We'll take a find changes shape. How many branches it has? 3. Add, update, and delete. Yes or no? All right. So when we go here, what does it say? The find changes shall provide a way for a process to track changes made to a document and to send the document results down to an add, update, or delete branch, right? Perfect. So what we'll do is we'll quickly add a, okay, we will leave it like this for the timing. We'll go to the find changes shape, and here we'll do the configuration. So it will only work for which type of profiles? 3 types of profiles: flat file, database, and XML, right? So that means it does not work for
JSON.
and EDI. Yes.
CSV.
Which one? CSV. CSV is part of flat file only, na?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll create a profile here quickly. So let's say I create employee, and here what we have to create? We have to create add elements. I'll add elements, employee ID, and one more element, which is that employee name. Save, go to options, and what kind of file it is? Comma delimited. I will say use column headers. We have the headers. Yes or no? We have the headers. So we'll say use column headers. And now it is asking us. So we created a profile, right? Which is pretty simple. And after here, we have to give key columns. Key columns means the set of columns that will help you to identify each record individually. So it may be one column or it can be set of columns. So in our case, which is that column that will help to identify each record individually?
Employee ID.
Employee ID and employee name.
Employee ID, right? Name is not unique, right? Can we have two people with the same name in a company? We can have it, right? Isn't it? So what I'm trying to say is employee ID is what you have to choose. Okay, hit OK. I mean, if you choose both, that is also fine, because combination of employee ID and employee name also will give you a unique employee. But employee ID typically itself will be unique. So why to go for employee name, right? Okay. So what I'll do is now I'll add a stop shape to all the branches. So we have 3 branches coming out of it. Now, please understand one thing. These all are going to work sequentially. Okay. And it may happen that for one single execution, more than one branch also executes. Okay. Let me explain you what I'm talking. Okay. I hope my screen is properly visible to all of you, right? So what we'll do is we'll deliberately add this so that we understand what is their sequence of execution also. Yes. Now this is the first time we are doing execution, right? Isn't it? This is the first time we are doing execution. Okay. I'll click on test. I'll select my atom. So what do you think, in which branch the control should go? Add, update, or delete?
Add.
Add. Fantastic. Control goes to add. Let's see what does actually go into add. Can you see employee ID and employee name? Right. So this may have a connectivity with the database, and in that database connector, which operation we will configure? Let's say this is coming from some data source. We realize it is a scenario of add. So what operation should be configured in this branch if this connectivity is eventually going to happen with the database?
Send.
Send is fine, but what is the operation? Insert operation, right? Isn't it? Guys, are you understanding what I'm talking? Send is fine, that is an action, but operation will be insert, right? If you want. Okay, now let's say I run it the same file again. What should happen? Which branch should get executed? Add, update, or delete? None of them, because nothing has changed. Yes. So what is happening behind the scene? It is very important to understand what is happening behind the scene. So in the Boomi installation directory, there is a directory called as work. In the work directory, there is a subdirectory called as CDC. What does CDC stand for?
Change data.
Change data capture. You go here. Can you see some 2 folders? What does this folder represent? You know, this folder name is as good as the component ID of your process. What is the component ID of your process? Starts with 743822 and ends with 291. Yes. Do you have some folder with this name?
Yes.
Yes. Do you find some file over here? Do you see the same data is being stored over here? So what is happening behind the scene? Whenever you get some new data, right, it is always compared with this file which is stored over here, and it will always store only the last executed file. So what I'm trying to say is, let's say now I change it to 101 Amit, and let's say I add 103 Ramya. So what do you think should happen? What do you think should happen?
Should update the first one and second one add the second detail.
Okay, one should get updated. Which should get updated? The one which has the employee ID 101, right? And the one which has employee ID is 103 should get
Added. Should be added.
added. Okay, let's give it a try. So add is working, but the control never went to update. Why?
End and return.
And then written.
Return. So what does that mean? Which one executes
Sequential.
first?
Add executes first.
Add executes first and then update. So let's go to see. Let's get to that add branch and see what went over there. Do you see the right record is going over there automatically? Yes.
Yes.
But update never executed because I wanted you to understand their sequence of execution, right? So now I will just turn this, continue, continue, continue. Okay. Now you have to understand one thing very, very important. Okay. If you go here in the backend, what is the file over here? There is only one file. So you have to understand we are not maintaining the complete history of the files. We are maintaining only the last executed file. If you will go here, do you find a new file over here now? Yes. If you want, you can, let's say I go and delete this. Yes, delete this. I delete the history. I have deleted the history. I will show you again. The history has been deleted. I come back over here. Now, what do you think? What will be the flow? I'm saying the place where it maintains the history, from where it will draw that comparison, that file has been deleted. Now, if I execute this process, what would be the flow? It is as good as the first time execution, right? Because it has nothing to compare. So the control should go only to the
Add.
It should go only to the add because it has nothing to compare, right? Let's check it out. You see, it is only going to add. And what should go to add? How many documents? Two documents, right? 101 Amit and 103 Ramya. It is implicitly doing that split and it is working as expected. Now what do we do is, now understand this. 103 change to Sumit. 101 Amit is not there. And let's say there is 102 Sai. Okay. Now you tell me what should happen. I will repeat. 101 has been deleted. 102 is newly added and 103 has been updated. So what do you think will happen? How many branches will get executed?
Two branches. One will be updated and one will be added.
Okay, but didn't we delete anything?
Yeah, we deleted.
Yeah, we
something.
deleted.
Yeah.
So all three branches will get executed. All three branches will get executed. Yes.
Yeah.
In add, what we should get?
Sai.
102, right?
Yeah.
Sai. Sai is the newly added employee as per this file. Yes, very nice. What did we update?
103.
103 Sumit.
Very nice. 103. And we added something new. And now what will be there in the behind the scene? A new file. What will be there? This new file. Are you understanding how it is working? Because until you see this file which is getting stored, you will not understand it. But once you see that file, if you understand what is happening behind the scene, things become really easy for you. Okay, now tell me one thing. Let's say I add one more, 104. Sushmita and 105 Shravya. What's gonna happen?
Add.
Only add will execute
Only add.
How many documents?
with 2 documents.
Okay, let's look at it. Okay, only add gets executed. You're absolutely correct. And add, how many documents do we have? 2. The first one, okay. The first one has Sushmita. And the second one has Shravya, right? So what would be there behind the scene? This file, right? Are you guys following this?
Yes, Smith.
Very important to understand how it is functioning. If you know what is happening behind the scene, right, it is pretty simple to understand. Now you have add, update, delete. So sometimes business requirement would be that we should not delete anything. So do not implement anything in delete in that case. Okay, just implement it and add and update. So here you can write logic. So in add we may have logic to insert the records into the database. In update we may have a logic to update the records into the database. In delete we may have a logic to delete the records from the database. Are you guys following it? So now I showed you one data type, right? One type of profile. Which one is that? Flat file. You have to try with the XML also. Okay. The only thing you might need to do with the XML is before the documents, if you have a complex XML file in which you have a repetition of certain element, you please split it before you send to the find changes. You please split it before you send to the find changes. Okay, in the flat file we didn't need to split it, but in the case of XML we will need to split it before you send it to the find changes. Otherwise it is same. You can try it out. If you face any issues, let me know. So tomorrow we will talk about the atom queue. Okay, again important topic. We'll talk about the atom queue tomorrow. And on Saturday and Sunday we'll have long sessions. So I'm planning 7:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. IST. Will it work for all of you? Saturday and Sunday.
Yes.
Yes. So we'll
Yes,
meet
Sumit.
on Saturday and Sunday, 7:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. IST. These sessions will be very, very crucial. Do not miss it. Yeah, we will talk about APIs specifically in these 2 sessions. Okay, and I think we should be good. I mean, that's pretty much, maybe by Sunday, I think we should be able to wind it up. Yeah, so that's pretty much, guys. Thanks everyone. Let's catch up tomorrow. I'll share this recording in the notes.